Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 24. Ta ete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarjitaha sangasteshvathate prarthyaha sangadosha harahite. Ta ete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarchitaha sangasteshvathate prarthyaha sangadosha harahite. Ta ete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarjitaha sangasteshvathate prarthyaha sangadosha harahite. Taete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarjitaha sangasteshu taye pratya sangadosha harahite. Taete sadhava sadhvi sanga sarvam rajitaha angasteshvara pratya sangadosha harahite. Taete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarjitaha sangasteshvatha pratyaha sangadosha harahite. Taete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarjitaha sangasteshvathate pratya sangadosha harahite. Taete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarjitaha sangasteshvathate prarthya sangadosha harahite. Taete sadhava sadhvi sarva sanga vivarjitaha sangasteshvathate pratya sangadosha harahite. Te ete, those very, sadhavaha, devotees, sadhvi, virtuous lady, sarva, all, sanga, attachments, vivarjitaha, freed from, sangaha, attachment, teshu, onto them, atha, hence, te, by you, prarthyaha, must be sought, sanga dosha, the pernicious effects of material attachment, Raha, counteractors of. Hi, indeed. Te, they. Translation. O my mother, O virtuous lady, these are the qualities of great devotees who are free from all attachment. You must seek attachment to such holy men, for this counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment. Purport. Kapila Muni herein advises his mother, Devahuti, that if she wants to be free from material attachment, she should increase her attachment for the sadhus, or devotees who are completely freed from all material attachment. In Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, verse 5, it is stated who is qualified to enter into the kingdom of Godhead. It is said there, Nirmana moha jita sanga doshaha. This refers to one who is completely freed from the puffed-up condition of material possessiveness. A person may be materially very rich, opulent, or respectable, but if he at all wants to transfer himself to the spiritual kingdom, back home, back to Godhead, then he has to be freed from the puffed-up condition of material possessiveness, because that is a false position. The word moha used here means the false understanding that one is rich or poor. In this material world, the conception that one is very rich or very poor, or any such consciousness in connection with material existence, is false, because this body itself is false or temporary. A pure soul who is prepared to be freed from this material entanglement must first of all be free from the association of the three modes of nature. Our consciousness at the present moment is polluted because of association with the three modes of nature. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, the same principle is stated. It is advised, Jitta Sangha Doshaha. One should be freed from the contaminated association of the three modes of material nature. Here also, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is confirmed. A pure devotee who is preparing to transfer himself to the spiritual kingdom is also freed from the association of the three modes of material nature. We have to seek the association of such devotees. For this reason, we have begun the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. There are many mercantile, scientific, and other associations in human society to develop a particular type of education or consciousness. But there is no association which helps one to get free from all material association. If anyone has reached the stage where he must become free from this material contamination, then he has to seek the association of devotees, wherein Krishna consciousness is exclusively cultured. One can thereby become freed from all material association. Because a devotee is freed from all contaminated material association, he is not affected by the miseries of material existence. Even though he appears to be in the material world, he is not affected by the miseries of the material world. How is it possible? There is a very good example in the activities of the cat. The cat carries her kittens in her mouth, and when she kills a rat, she also carries the booty in her mouth. Thus, both are carried in the mouth of the cat, but they are in different conditions. The kitten feels comfort in the mouth of the mother, whereas when the rat is carried in the mouth of the rat feels the blows of death. Similarly, those who are sadhavaha, or devotees engage in Krishna consciousness in the transcendental service of the Lord, do not feel the contamination of material miseries, whereas those who are not devotees in Krishna consciousness actually feel the miseries of material existence. One should therefore give up the association of materialistic persons and seek the association of persons engaged in Krishna consciousness, and by such association he will benefit in spiritual advancement. By their words and instructions, he will be able to cut off his attachment to material existence. And the translation again. O my mother, O virtuous lady, these are the qualities of great devotees who are free from all attachment. You must seek attachment to such holy men, for this counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Ki Jai. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Habri Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratushe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So when I looked over this text later last night than I should have, but I did look over it and I thought this is a very famous text in this chapter. And then I realized that actually it's one of the very many famous texts in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, we find Kapila Muni, he reiterates this principle a lot, right? We'll find, I think we already would have had one mention, but there's a few more to come. Kapila Muni, he actually stresses in this section of Bhagavatam the importance of devotee association. In fact, tomorrow we'll have another nectarian text, but also throughout, right? This is a recurring and important principle. And as Srila Prabhupada illustrates in his very, very long and nectarian purport, this is something that we find stressed throughout the Shastras. There is no point in the Shastra where we will not have such a principle illustrated, right? And what is this principle? This principle is to seek out the association of the devotees. But not just the devotees, but specifically it is qualified that the devotees have a certain nature. And what is that? Sarva Sangha Vivarjitaha. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, he defines that this lack of desire is somebody who is free from any desire for kama, artha, dharma, and moksha, right? So the kaitava dharma, the cheating dharmas, right? All of the things that the majority of the people want to do. These are the things that the Vaishnava is free from, that the devotee is free from. And it is such people who are free from any of these compunctions that we should associate with, that we should seek out. And it's rather interesting, right? This principle of sadhu sangha is often defined in two general categories by the various acharyas. We find there is one form of sadhu sangha, which is association with the words of the sadhu, right? Sometimes we refer to this as vani seva, right? And when we refer to it as vani seva, it is the superior form. But when we refer to it in terms of interacting and engaging with the Bhagavat, then there is, then actually the vani form can be considered the inferior form. That is to engage with the written books or works of the Bhagavat, right? The book Bhagavat. But then there is also the person Bhagavat, and the person Bhagavat is considered much more valuable, right? To seek out the association of that individual who embodies the Bhagavatam is the supreme principle. And this is interesting, I find. We often have it stressed, right? Of course, we could refer in Shastra to the importance of studying Shastra. And that is very important. It's an interesting point if we run into Mayavadis today. they'll tell you, all sorts of nonsense. Well, thank you. But today there's a new type of Mayavadi, right? And this new type of Mayavadi will say, you don't need to study any shastras. You don't need to do anything. All you need to do is focus inside your heart, and you will realize you are already enlightened. This is a new conception that's going around. And I found it rather interesting because when you look into it, all the traditional Mayavadis are very upset with this. They say, actually, in order to realize Brahman, you need to study the Shastras. In order to realize you are actually Bhagavan, you must study the Shastras. And I found this rather interesting because if you study the Shastras, you'll realize you're not Bhagavan. But anyways, I'm happy they can be the cause of their own demise, right? And encourage the study of Shastra. So this is interesting, right? We find that it is a principle that's emphasized. Study the Shastra, study the Shastra. But nowhere near as much as this principle of sadhu sangha is emphasized. I think there's something very interesting in that. These days, we're seeing there's a resurgence in fascination with ChatGPT and all of these AIs and stuff. And it's very interesting. I find, at least. I know all my professors at university. They're all very interested as well because they're thinking, what if this puts me out of a job, right? And so there's a lot of discourse, right? Oh, look what this AI can do. I bit the bug of Maya, and I thought, okay, I'll take a look at it as well. And I remember I went to one of the AIs and I asked it about Krishna consciousness, right? I thought, let me see what I can find out from this great and revered sadhu, right? So I went to it, and of course, what does an AI do, right? There's no jiva behind it, or at least I hope there's no jiva behind it, because what it does is it just goes through everything on the internet and then it synthesizes a response, right? So I hope there's no jiva behind it, because that would be a really terrible, terrible thing to have to do. But it was interesting because it did go through everything that was on the internet. When it gave me its response, I thought, somebody needs to chastise this AI for prajalpa, It was synthesizing everything that everyone says, and I thought, this reflects, right, how poor the discourse is in devotee communities. It wasn't the fault of the AI, actually. It was the fault of all of the information it was passing through. I thought, actually, it was saying some pretty, it was saying some pretty unideal things, right? So I thought, we need to speak to whoever the spiritual authority is of ChatGPT and have it chastised, right? But it's interesting, right? These things, all they can do is they can synthesize and reproduce what has already been written. And it's an interesting point, because I was thinking about when I was a teenager, which clearly wasn't so very long ago. When I was a teenager, before I had decided to maybe take Krishna consciousness a tiny bit more seriously, I used to play a lot of video games, right? Not a lot of video games. I used to like strategy games where you map out all your little people on the map and then you fight someone else, right? And I used to play these games a lot. And there's something rather interesting that people, they very much enjoy to play these games with others, right? You can play against the AI, you can play against the computer, but there's no fun in it, right? Everyone likes to play these games against someone else. Everyone always likes to engage with someone else. I know one of my professors, he says that if he plays on his computer, he likes to play chess, right? And he says that if he likes to play against the computer, it's not fun. The computer is better at chess than any other human he can play against, but he still wants to play against his friends, right? And there's something interesting in that. And he says that the main thing for him that he finds very fun about playing against another human is the other human actually wants to beat him, right? The other human actually wants to win. The computer doesn't care, right? The computer lacks any volition. It lacks any desire, right? The computer doesn't want to do anything. The computer simply just processes numbers and then defeats him every single time, right? It's like that. It's boring. So even when it's easier, it's more engaging, because we have this principle of enjoying the association of other people. We enjoy to interact with other people, even when people push against us in the example of a game, or even when people push against us, even in the context of devotional service, right? It's always that somebody has a unique opinion. I always like to give the example, right? When Krishna goes out to play in the fields in Gokul, right? In Goloka, right? When he likes to go and play out in the fields, what happens is all his cowherd friends, right? What do they say? They say, Krishna, come play with us, right? We will wrestle, we will climb up the high trees, we'll do something very dangerous, right? And what does Mother Jashoda say? Mother Jashoda, she becomes so stressed. No, stay at home, right? Don't get injured, right? So here we see, even in perfection, right? Because they're individuals, there's that difference, right? So difference is a very lovely thing. It's a very wonderful thing. And in fact, we relish it. We relish when we can engage with other people who desire their own thing, right? That interaction of desire, that interaction of uniqueness is something that we relish. And so we see, I think that AIs and all give a very nice example that no matter what, we will never stop associating with people, right? Association with other jivas is something that's so inherent to what we want, right? It's very, very lonely to be with machines, right? Now people, they talk about, again, all these things AI can do. And it'll be interesting because we still see that the main people who have to engage with AI are the people who can't afford to engage with people, right? It's now becoming a thing that to engage with a human being is a luxury item, right? You can get the automated one if you are not so financially able, but if you are very rich, and of course the only way to be very rich in this day and age is to be a demon, right? So if you're very rich, then you can engage with another person. And I think this reflects that principle further, right? Those who have the option to choose will always choose to engage with a person, right? We see in stores, people like things to be handmade, right? People like to see the thing being made by a person in front of them. If somebody says a machine made this, then they're not so interested, right? I often think Prabhupada makes a point about the consciousness of the person who makes the food that you're eating. It impacts how you think. I always wonder, how does it affect us when we're eating something that's made with no consciousness, right? It's a completely unconscious process, right? Just a machine churning it out. So in this way, we see that interacting with other conscious entities is something that we are always doing. And so, not only are we interacting with them, but we're serving them. Srila Prabhupada, he gives this example. In one of his classes on Nectar of Devotion. He speaks about asakti, right? About attachment, right? And he says if you're not attached to Krishna, you'll be attached to something, right? No matter what. And he gives the example, and it's actually, I was surprised this was already happening back then, right? Prabhupada gives the example, even some people, right? They won't have children, but then they will purchase a dog, and that dog will be their child. I still remember I was working in my gap year, I worked at a cafe. And in the cafe, I heard one of the chefs, she was saying, look at my baby child. And everyone was saying, oh, how sweet, how sweet. And I thought, okay, I'll go. I'll say congratulations, congratulations for having your child. I want to keep nice, a nice relationship with everyone I work with. So I went over in this Mataji. I was like, oh, can I see? And she showed me a picture of her dog, all dressed up nicely. And I thought, oh, okay, it's your nice baby child. I had no idea what to say. I thought, okay, this is something new. So I said, oh, very sweet, very sweet. I'm going to go somewhere very far away and process or whatever this is. But Prabhupada, he gives this example, right? He gives this example. Even if they won't have children, people will buy a dog and then they will treat that like a child or something like that, right? This is that propensity to be attached. And this is because, especially in modern Western society is built on this assumption that we are all individuals. If you go very boringly into the history of how Western thought developed, it was built from what we call the Enlightenment, right? The Enlightenment, right? Which was actually much the opposite. And in the Enlightenment, there was this idea: each person is an individual, and they are fully independent. That's why all of our governments, they're called liberal governments, because liberal means to be free, right? Now liberal has another connotation, but in its original meaning, it meant to be free. And what did that mean? I am free from everyone else. I do what I want, right? And of course, such ideas have become under a lot of critique, but they still underline how we think. We think, I can just do whatever, right? I am just myself. And if I want to do this, I can do this. But this is not the case at all, right? Everything we do is mitigated by others, right? The food we eat is made by someone else, right? Even if we cook it, the crops are grown by someone else. We learned how to speak from someone else. In fact, we continue to learn how to speak from others. This is the point that's often made. People say, if you could somehow get somebody all the way back in time from whatever era and put them in a room today and have them speak their language, they wouldn't be speaking their language because you need two people to speak a language, right? Language is spoken and it's understood. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the third canto, we hear that sound in the Vedic conception is only sound if it is spoken and if it is heard, right? Even our speaking, even our thinking, all these things are only done in relationship to other people. How do we learn what words mean? We learn what words mean because we hear how other people use them, right? And how do we think? We think with words. Our very thinking is depending on other people, right? Our eating is depending on other people, right? How does everything function, right? How are we transporting around, going around here and there, depending on other people, right? How do we manage to afford everything? Actually, everything is done by the individual works of other people. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, he was once giving class at a university, and he was speaking about, of course, as Radhanath Maharaj does, right? He was speaking about the glories of Krishna consciousness and why one should take to this process of devotional service. And then at one point, at the question time, this one person very loudly, he stood up. Radhanath Maharaj later found out he was the head of the atheist Marxist sort of union, right? So he stood up and very loudly, he said, if I do what you're telling me to do, well, if everyone becomes like you, society will fall apart, right? If everyone becomes a sadhu like you, if everyone becomes a saffron-clad sannyasi like you, society will fall apart, right? And so Radhanath Maharaj, he heard the question, and he said, what degree are you studying? This person very proudly, he said, I'm doing an accounting degree. Right? And Radhanath Maharaj said, if everyone becomes an accountant like you, society will fall apart, right? So what is the principle, right? We are all dependent on all sorts of varieties of classes of people, right? Again, this is the glory of Varnashram, right? Varnashram is a way of acknowledging and enforcing and realizing this idea that we are always reliant on other people. And so there's a very communal understanding, but it's a very real understanding. None of us are individuals, actually, right? And don't worry, I'm not meaning that in a Mayavad sense. I'm meaning that in a sense that none of us are true individuals. So if this is the case, right, that none of us are true individuals, right, that none of us are independent, right, then we have to be very, very aware of what sort of kind of people are we associating with, right? What is the quality of the people which we are nourished by? And what is the nature of the people we are nourished by, right? Because no matter what, we cannot escape the fact that we are nourished by other people. We cannot escape that. Again, as I use the example, even our words, they are not our own. Everything is given to us by others. And so here we find the principle of sadhu sangha is very practical, right? If I want to become like the devotee, then I must associate with the devotees, right? Because from them I will be nourished and I will develop and I will grow into such a person, right? I will use their language. I will pick up their mannerisms, right? I know this even with my university friends. I remember once. I'm not saying that I'm a devotional association. I'm just saying that you can see how people influence each other. I still remember one day we were all talking and somebody said some good news, and then one of my university friends, never been to a temple or anything, he said, "Oh, Jai," and I thought, "Oh wow, see, that's how much people influence each other, right?" So I when I saw that, I thought, oh wow, I wasn't even trying to preach to him. I was just trying to pass the subject. Actually, it was chemistry. It was very difficult. I wasn't preaching or anything, and I thought, still, right? He's just picked up some tiny little thing, right? So like this, we're constantly feeding into each other, and in this way, we should be associating with the Vaishnavas, right? And because of this helps us remind ourselves of our actual dependency, of our lack of independent nature, right? We are always reminded that we are always at the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he discusses a very common phenomenon, right? And I'm sure we can all relate. We can all remember the first time that we really chanted Hare Krishna, right? I can't remember the first time in this. I can't remember my first time, but of course, in my teenage years, like many devotee kids, I was like, oh, there's no God, I'm a monkey, etc., right? I thought all those things. So there was a long while where I wasn't chanting, and I still remember the first time I really seriously tried to chant after that. And we all have that experience, right? And we think, how amazing it was, right? Like wow, I can do this 24/7, And we often see this, right? When people first come to Krishna consciousness, they're chanting 148 rounds a day, you know what I mean? They're very fired up. They read Srimad Bhagavatam every day, right? This is that first, because you get that taste. And then everyone experiences as the months go by, You're like, I know this is the higher taste, but now it's feeling like the normal taste, right? It's starting to feel normalized. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he discusses this phenomenon, and he says that the reason why is not that the holy name becomes less relishable. God forbid we would ever say anything as audacious as that, right? It's not that the holy name becomes less relishable. What happens is, the first time we chant with full surrender, actually. Because we have no idea what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going to come out of this. We just think, okay, I will chant this, and I will see where the holy name takes me. I will see where Harinam Prabhu takes me. I will see where this incarnation of the Lord decides to guide me, what it decides to reveal to me. And so we chant like that in that mood. We don't realize it, but that's the mood we're chanting in, right? We have no preconception of what will happen. And then the second time we still chant like that, and then we're chanting and we think, oh wow, this is amazing. But then as it keeps on going, the trick of the material world creeps in. And what do we start thinking? We start thinking, oh, I'm the doer. So when I chant, I have these lovely experiences. So just you wait. I will start chanting my rounds, and then I will have these lovely experiences again. I can cause these experiences to happen, right? They are in my control. Because when I chant, I get these lovely experiences. When I chant, I'm flying in the air. When I chant, none of the worries of the world are there anymore. So all I need to do is I need to chant. And the moment it's something about what I can do, then Maya has crept in. And then the anarthas, they begin to cover our ability to experience the holy name again. The identification, right? What's the word? Tattva vibhrama. That's what the acharyas use to describe the anartha of incorrect philosophical understanding, right? Because at that point we think, I am the doer. I am the causer of my spiritual life, right? I am the one who is causing everything. Sadhana is this uphill climb, and I'm the one climbing it. And once again, I am an individual. The devotees, they help me out because then they help me eat, right? The devotees help me out because they let me do my independent sadhana, independent of them. They just sort of help facilitate it. And of course, experientially, we can't avoid that, right? At the end of the day, it's us chanting our rounds. As much as sometimes, we're in an ocean of anarthas, we can feel, I wish I could ask somebody to chant my rounds for me today. I'm so busy. I have so many services to do, Prabhu, could you please chant my rounds for me? You're not so busy today. Sometimes we feel that way, but at the end of the day, we do have to chant our rounds. But all of that chanting comes only through the mercy of the Vaishnavas. I think about this often, that actually, if it wasn't for my spiritual master telling me, you have to chant 16 rounds a day, by now I would be chanting 1 or 2. If I'm lucky, right? If I had some other mercy from other devotees, I would be chanting 1 or 2 rounds, right? It's not that I'm so disciplined and so great that I can chant in 16 rounds. What's that? It's such a small number, really, when we think about it, right? But even that, it can be a struggle. But I was thinking, even such a small achievement, I would not be able to do without the mercy of my spiritual master telling me, you must chant 16 rounds. So all of these things, even though we think these are my independent sadhana, all of them come directly from the Vaishnavas, right? And that's why it's a common thing we find when you speak to devotees, we all have that experience. After your initiation, you can feel your chanting becomes, there's a special flavor to it then, right? So in this way, we can experience dependency on the Vaishnavas. And this is so very important, because when we are aware of how dependent we are on the Vaishnavas, it becomes harder and harder to fall into this idea, to fall into Bhaktivinoda Thakur's trap, that I am the doer, right? I am causing my spiritual life to happen. I'm causing all of it to happen. Actually, none of it is there. Forget about my chanting. Actually, when I think about it, if it wasn't for the relationships that I have with the devotees, I don't think I would be even practicing Krishna consciousness today, right? I can tell myself all these things. Oh, the philosophy is so powerful. And it is so powerful, right? But so are my anarthas, so is Maya, right? The philosophy is so powerful, right? All of these things are so very powerful. But at the end of the day, the only way I'm even able to experience that power of all of them is through the association of the devotees. I was speaking to His Grace Padmanabhan Prabhu, and he was telling me this. He said, Prabhu, in the sadhak stage, in the stage of, especially the early stage of sadhana, he said, you will read all this philosophy and you will enjoy it. But what will happen is your mind will just be this constant machine, and it will just keep on inventing new ideas, new concerns that aren't there. You will just be chanting. And even while you're chanting and relishing the holy name, suddenly the mind will say, hey, what about this, right? What about that, right? You will read the books and you'll think, oh, maybe there's this. All of these things, as a sadhak, the mind is producing, right? So the philosophy, the holy name, they are all incredibly powerful, right? But in this conditioned state, we are also very, very powerful in our ability to just ignore that. But through the mercy of the Vaishnavas, we are able to become anchored again, right? Our doubts are dispelled. I still remember I was speaking to one of my friends, and he was having lots of doubts, lots of concerns with Krishna consciousness. And he was having actually how our acharyas define doubt. Often, again, we associate doubt with, oh, but Prabhu, how many people could fit on the Kurukshetra battlefield? There's no bones left or anything. But that's a very modern way of thinking of doubt. That's not actually how our acharyas discuss doubt. When they speak about doubt, like in the Bhagavad Gita, we hear Krishna, he speaks about the importance of Shraddha. When they define what does it mean to be a person who is filled with Shraddha, they say the person who is filled with Shraddha is somebody who is convinced that by executing Krishna consciousness, they will attain all of the goals that the devotees say they will attain. This is how Shraddha, faith, is defined. Faith is the conviction that bhakti will deliver what it is said to deliver. And so my friend, he was having these doubts. And so he went, and he was very upset, and his Shiksha Guru was away for a while, right? And so at one point his Shiksha Guru was available, and he said, Prabhu, I'm having so many doubts, please, I really, really need to discuss with you, please, And I remember, I still remember, because I was talking to him during the time. And I still remember, I was like, oh, this is so much, I don't want to say negativity, because he was opening his heart, right? But I was like, he's really, really, really in a situation here. I had to tell him, I can't really help you. Speak to your Shiksha Guru, So I told him like that, right? And then he told me. So I still remember, for days, for weeks, constantly I was hearing, he would always be telling me, oh, I just don't know, like this. And I remember exactly he told me. I said, how did it go? And he said, halfway through the Mangalacharan, all my doubts were gone, right? Before I even got to ask my questions, my Shiksha Guru, he just led me through a Mangalacharan. And then halfway through, once we finished Vandeham, right? At that point, I thought, actually, what's the problem, right? So the mind is this machine, right? All of it is all just not there. And how is it dispelled? It's dispelled through the association of the devotees, right? Even with your chanting, right? I'm sure we all experience that. It's so sweet, actually, to chant with the other devotees. That's why we're the Sankirtan movement, right? We're not the Kirtan movement, right? We're the Sankirtan movement, right? Because when we chant with the other devotees, then suddenly the holy name, it doesn't become more relishable. It's always relishable. But in that moment, we are able to more deeply appreciate it. And so, because of all these reasons, we see Srila Prabhupada, what does he say here? For this reason, we have begun the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And so I find this interesting, right? Because people have all sorts of visions of why they're attending ISKCON, what they're attending ISKCON for, right? I'm attending because I want to have a better understanding of Shastra. I'm attending because of this, because of that, right? But how has Prabhupada here said that the purpose of ISKCON has been established for? He said it is for the purpose of creating association, right? So I often wonder, how do we define an ISKCON member? That's an interesting question, right? Is an ISKCON member somebody who's initiated? Well, I wouldn't want to say that, right? Because there's so many wonderful devotees who are doing such wonderful service, and they're not yet initiated, right? Do we want to say they're life members? Well, I think there's probably sannyasis who aren't life members, right? So I don't think that's a good definition either. And I think Prabhupada here, he's providing a very sweet definition for an ISKCON member. An ISKCON member is somebody who is coming to an ISKCON center for the purpose of having devotional association with the Vaishnavas, right? This is what an ISKCON member is. If somebody comes for another reason, maybe they're not an ISKCON member. Srila Prabhupada says here, there are many mercantile, scientific, and other associations, right? So if somebody is coming for some other purpose, then of course, how very fortunate they are to be coming here for that purpose. But if somebody is a true ISKCON member, a pakka ISKCON member, what are they? They're somebody who is coming in order to think, when I come to this temple, I have the association with the Vaishnavas. And what do? They tell me about Krishna. And when they tell me about Krishna, and that is all that I want to do with my time, right? And then so what is the point then of ISKCON? The point of ISKCON is to facilitate the association with the devotees. Without that, we have nothing. And so I'm reminded once, I have it written out here because I don't want to butcher the quote. So I saved it on my phone earlier, but I read it very interestingly. There was a pastime of His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he was asked the question, and the question was, among the many devotees in the mutt, who, having accepted the shelter of your lotus feet, sincerely and incessantly engage in rendering various kinds of service for your divine pleasure, both day and night, whose service do you consider to be the topmost? So I thought this was an interesting question, right? Because we can think again, right? These are all people who've given up everything to serve Saraswati Thakur day and night, right? And so this question was asked. And Srila Prabhupada, what did he say? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he said, the greatness of a person's service to the Vaishnavas is directly proportional to the amount of love and affection he has developed in his heart for those Vaishnavas. The greater the affection, the greater the service. So I thought this was a very sweet principle, and I think this is underlying what Prabhupada is saying here, right? We can come to the association of the devotees, and we can do all sorts of things. But the whole purpose of our association with the devotees is to grow deeper in our affection for them, right? Sometimes we can feel distant from the devotees, we can feel upset with the devotees. And His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu, he always gives the example. We know Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what has he come to give? Manjari Bhav, Gopi Bhav, the highest thing, right? We can't even imagine how high it is. What Mahaprabhu has come to give is something that even Krishna himself hankers for. Krishna himself thinks, I do not have this, I want this. How valuable it can be. And who is he giving it to? The great personalities in Satya Yuga? No, he's given it to the most fallen in Kali Yuga, right? How can we understand the mercy of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Patita Pavana, right? How can we understand such levels of mercy? And yet, we also hear, right, that he has come to kill demons. But how does he kill demons? He kills demons through the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Like this, Mahaprabhu has come, armed with the weapon of the holy name, to cleanse out all of the demonic tendencies that we all have, or at least I have, within ourselves, right? So Mahaprabhu has come to do this, and we see this very sweetly. He's going to anyone and everyone, and he's distributing the holy name. But then we find Jagai and Madhai, right? And Mahaprabhu, he forgets it, right? Or we hear all of this talk, I'm here to be most merciful, I'm here to cleanse everyone of their sinful reactions. But what does he do to Jagai and Madhai? He gets ready to properly kill them. He's not killing the demons inside them, he's ready to kill them, right? And why is that? Because they committed such a great offense against the devotees, right? Because they did the opposite of what we are intending to do. And then, of course, Mahaprabhu, as we know, he stops, right? He ceases. And why does he cease in his violence? His very righteous and valid violence? He ceases because of the prayers of the Vaishnava, right? Because of the insistence of the devotees. And there we can see the power, right, of sadhu sangha. Because when we have the association of the sadhu, then our faults, as much as they may be there, they are easier for Krishna to ignore, right, when the sadhu is there with us. And so Madhavananda Prabhu, he says, sometimes as devotees, we think, I'm greater than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'm greater than Nityananda Prabhu. If somebody has done a fault, I will hold it against them. Mahaprabhu, he can ignore them, right? Because he does not have as good and as developed a sense of justice as I do, right? I have an appropriate understanding of the world. I have an appropriate understanding of justice, right? Of course, this is a very incorrect understanding. And so we come back to the principle that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, that he illustrates. And what is that principle? That we grow in our Krishna consciousness by how much we love the devotees. Often people, they ask, how do I understand? Is my chanting efficient? Right? Is my sadhana effective? Has my reading been good? Right? Have I been reading effectively the Shastras? And they will say all these things. What is the metric that I can understand it with? And I think it's actually rather clear when we study Prabhupada's books and all, that the real metric is how much am I loving the devotees? When I see the devotees, do I think, oh no, now I'm in public, I don't have to say Hare Krishna in public, I don't think people to think I'm a weirdo, right? Do we think like that? Or sometimes we can fall victim to that. Or do we think, oh, this devotee, you know, I was so excited for Mahaprasad, and I was waiting and waiting, and they took all the Mahaprasad sweets, and I had to have the spicy sabji. This devotee, I'm not so happy seeing them anymore. We can think like that, but this is maybe a sign that maybe we're not going deeply into our sadhana. Going deeply into the sadhana is that we see this person, oh, I know this person thinks very lowly of me, right? I see this person, and I know this person, I was there lining up for darshan, and this person, he cut in front of me, right? I was doing one service, and this devotee complained, and now he's doing that service, right? Oh, this person, how happy I am to see him. Because he is a devotee of the Lord. Because he carries on his lips the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a mood is a sign that one's sadhana is deepening, right? Because this is the principle of one's devotional service, going deeper and deeper and deeper. Because actually, we are in such a small position, as Madhavananda Prabhu says, right? We think we are greater than Mahaprabhu. And this is why, and I will finish on this note, this is why we see Srila Prabhupada. What is he referring to in this 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, right? He's referring to this principle. And it's rather interesting because, well, what's the name of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Does anyone? It's the yoga of the Supreme Person, right? Purushottam Yoga, right? Purushottama Yoga. This is the trajectory of that chapter, and it's rather interesting, right? Because we hear about, well, Purushottama. We always say it together, but what does it mean? It means Uttama Purusha. It means the greatest person. And we see already we've heard about the Purusha, right, in chapter 13, right? I always get the order out of what is it? The material world, no, nature, the enjoyer, and anyways, now I'm forgetting but it's describing the principle of the Purusha, right? Arjuna, he asks the 6 questions. What is Prakriti, what is Purusha, what is Jnana, what is Gyeya, and what is Kshetra, and what is the Kshetra Gya, right? And of course, we can speak a while about that. It's very interesting, the response, because Krishna, he jumps between schools of philosophy. When he speaks about Kshetra and Kshetra Gya, he uses Sankhya philosophy. When he speaks about Jnana and Gyeya, he actually switches to Vedantic philosophy. And then when he goes back to discuss Prakriti and Purusha, he's discussing Sankhya again, right? And I bring this up because Prakriti and Purusha, and they're a Sankhya division. But Sankhya, as it's often practiced, is atheistic. When they speak about the Purusha, right? what they speak about is they say that each jiva is the Purusha and there's no absolute Purusha. Right? It is not the Sankhya we are reading about in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's almost a way that it can be seen, right? In that section as well, in chapter 13. Whenever Krishna discusses Purusha, actually the acharyas differ. They say somewhere, oh, maybe he's speaking about Bhagavan here. Others say, no, he's speaking about the jiva here, right? They switch back and forth, right? And so that's there. And then we know it settles, and then in chapter 14 we hear about the three modes of material nature. But then Krishna, he comes back to this point in chapter 15. And in chapter 15 we hear almost a summary, an emphasis on chapter 13, right? Because chapter 13 is discussing Prakriti and Purusha, right? Prakriti, the material world, and Purusha. And so what do we learn in chapter 15? It begins with that beautiful, beautiful description of the Ashwatha tree, right? And this is Prakriti, right? Here we find that principle is being elaborated upon, right? So there we find Prakriti, so very nicely elaborated upon. But then what do we hear? Before we've been hearing, the Purusha is the one driving the material world, right? Because of the Purusha, the whole material world is being enacted out. And what do we hear when we hear the discussion of the Purusha in chapter 15? We hear that it's a jiva being thrown around in samsara, right? But then what do we hear? We hear that there is a Purushottama, right? There is an Uttama Purusha. There is a Purusha who is greater than any of us, because we are only Purusha in relation to the material world. Srila Prabhupada says, the moment bhakti becomes involved, the moment the Supreme Personality becomes involved, we are Prakriti as well. We are the Prakriti of Purushottama. We are now that which is exploited. We are now that which is controlled by that Supreme Purush, right? And so the whole trajectory of this chapter, we can say, is to minimize the position of the jiva, right? Before we're hearing the jiva has all this control over matter, matter is dead, right? Apparayamitasthanyam, right? We know the shloka, right? And we know the jiva is the superior energy, the jiva is superior, the jiva is animating. And here at this point, Krishna says, the jiva is only superior when it is in its foolish, conditioned material state. The moment the jiva understands that there is Purushottama, right? The moment the jiva understands this, then we have knowledge that actually the jiva is very inferior. The jiva is Prakriti. And there is only one Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so we see here, there's this continuous trend that the more we learn, the greater we become, the less we are. And so this is the, if you will, this is the message of that chapter. And this is a message that becomes imbibed only when we have the association of the Vaishnavas. Only when we have the association of the devotees do we truly understand this. And it is because of this that Srila Prabhupada, he says that he has established this international society for Krishna consciousness. So, on that note, we'll conclude. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.